Hello, 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 dear friend. Okay. Um, as I said, I'm going to be letting people in as the call proceeds. We never know how many we're going to get on a night, but I have
Right.
got the amazing Kirt Graves at Kirt Graves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're pretty straightforward, but I never assume because then I get it wrong. Um, so the story behind this is that Kurt asked me to be on his podcast. And nobody ever asks me to be on their podcasts, partly because um, I forget that you're supposed to put yourself forward for this stuff. And I've like never actually thought to do it. But I was so tickled pink that somebody asked me to be a guest on their podcast. I was just like really, really excited. And I get on the podcast, and in the back of my head, I'm saying, don't say anything. Just be quiet. Just don't stick your foot in your mouth, Daniela, because you don't have the editing power on this one. So Kurt and Andre Santana were on the call, and I fell so in love with both these human beings that the wisdom, the intelligence, the generosity, the oh my God, the rigor that Andre applies to every single thought and every single word that he says, the experience and the energy and the presence that Kurt had. I was telling Kurt before this call, there was a presence that it's star quality. It's what we all want. It's a lifetime of experience together with huge, huge talent and a lack of fear. You,
Mm.
I got the feeling I was talking to somebody that had confronted themselves, saw the good, the bad, the ugly, and came out the other side. And I'm not saying that as an age thing, because I don't know. You could be 18 or 19 for all I know. I can never tell. But it's a wisdom and a knowledge and a know thyself kind of thing. And so what I want to know is 10-year-old Kurt, what was the first thing you did when you got home from school every day? What did you look forward to?
Oh.
What did you love doing when you were 10?
um, One, I would clean my room because
Really?
yeah, well, so later in life, I was diagnosed with OCD, and a lot of things I did when I was younger suddenly made sense because,
Okay.
yeah, couldn't function unless the room was clean and everything was in its proper place. And then I
Okay.
probably pulled out a big bucket of Legos and started building things and telling stories.
I love that.
Um,
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I have one brother who's about 5.5 years younger than I am. That's that weird age gap where like you don't go through a lot of the same stuff together at the same time. So like when we were closest was probably when we were younger, like 5 and 10, and we could both play with Legos or we could both play with Power Rangers toys and stuff like that. And people are always like, when you grow up and you're both adults, you'll finally snap together and you'll be like in the same phase of life. It hasn't been true for us. So but I do have one younger brother.
So, okay, so 10-year-old, were you a happy kid? Were you a worried kid? Were you playing in the moment? Were you looking to the future? Get us
Oh,
inside 10-year-old Kurt's brain.
I think like I was probably a little neurotic even back then. My nickname from my parents was Charlie Brown because I was always kind of mopey. Um, so I think I was like experiencing a bit of ennui even as a child. I actually had to learn later in life to take myself less seriously. Uh,
Yeah.
but that being said, like, yes, I grew up in a happy home and like I always had outlets for creativity, and like school was a place that I could succeed. And so that was an identifier for me, as being high achieving in whatever ways that means. I mean, later in life, we look back and we're like, well, that didn't mean anything. But, it gave me a place to be, it gave me a
What
place to belong.
subjects? What subjects did you like in school?
I mean, all of them. I just liked school. I liked to be the best. I liked to fight for that place in class, the person who's getting 100%.
I love that. I was like why do I have to deal with these people? Seriously, get me
Mm,
home to my books. And seriously cuts into your TV time.
well, that's true. That is true.
So
Yeah,
did you
no,
like socializing? Are you like do you like being around other people then?
no, I'm I'm very much an introvert. I I need a close group of friends. I need like 3 or 4 people that I'm very close to that I see regularly. That's all I need. Uh Putting me in like larger social situations, where I like parties where there's like 20, 30 people there and you're bouncing and you're not really having real conversations with anybody.
Yeah,
I want to
that's
have
my happy
I want to have
place.
real conversations. I like even in a party of 100 people, if there's 2 people and we're talking about something very serious or like very meaningful to us, like I'm in my
Yeah,
happy place. Like
yeah,
really intense connections with people. I like that, but I need my alone time. I need space. Um, people like my husband will sometimes like go on a work trip and people will be like, "Do you miss him?" And I'm like, "God, no." Because this is my time to recharge my batteries.
yeah,
Like I get to be alone in my own space.
yeah,
No, I need that. Like that's where I can really breathe and recharge the batteries. And because I mean
yeah.
you can't be alone all the time. That wouldn't work either. So I have to find my moments to like be
I think
without
that's a
other
secret
people.
to a happy relationship is navigating those spaces. We do and people laugh, like people think I sound horrible when I say this, but it's a secret to a happy marriage. I'm watching a show and my husband will be like looking at the computer or reading his news or something, and he'll say stuff and I'll answer. But meantime, I've got the subtitles on so I can read and kind
Yeah.
of because that's my mental. You'd go crazy if you were constantly focused on one other person every single minute of the day. You
Mhm.
have to like,
I mean, I believe there's probably people in the world that works for them. I'm just not one of them.
yeah.
You know,
I'm a
that's not
distance
me.
person. I've never been that close kind of. I've had roommates like that wanted that kind of relationship. I see them on
Hmm.
TV, people that like hug their friends and they're very close, but I've never been that person.
Yeah.
I've never been that person. I like the hordes. I like lots of like 2-second conversations, smile and glitter and move on. But
Well, hey, then I'll just follow you at a party if we're ever in the same place at the
yes,
same time because I
yes.
can just benefit from your sparkliness and
Well, what we can do is you follow me at the party, and when anyone starts to get too deep, I'll say, "Have you met Kurt?
yeah.
Kurt so and so," and I'll wander.
There we go. There's
I
room for
always, I
all
always end up
types.
in, yeah, I end up in the parking lot talking to the weird guy go by some truck,
Yeah.
trying to figure out. So, Kurt,
I end up in the parking lot in the truck listening to an audiobook, hoping people leave me alone.
do you read? Oh,
Literally
oh,
at my nephew's wedding, like it just got to a point, not my nephew's, it was some in-law family member, maybe like a cousin, because my husband's from one of those small towns where like every single human gets invited to the wedding, and we've gone to some of these and I'm like, I've never met this person. Why are we here? But we're here, we're at the wedding, and it's like, yeah, I will after about an hour, I will excuse myself from the social situation and I will put in my headphones and I will be separate and perfectly happy by myself.
it's yeah. I think with me is I love deep, intimate. You're my very best friend in the world in situations where I know I probably won't ever have to see you again.
Interesting.
But I don't
Interesting.
want to be like best friends where like you're gonna like then expect me to keep being because I've got an attention span of a fly. So like
Mm,
friends like that they get upset if you like forget to call back for a few months. And
right.
so I want to hear everything seemed charmed. You know, you're a kid, you're building Legos, you're incredibly intelligent, which we already know about you. You're having a nice childhood. We all run into obstacles at some point or
Mm.
challenges. I mean, feel free, you don't have to say anything you're uncomfortable saying. But was there a time where you came face to face with that and you had to change or pivot as a person? And how did you get over that obstacle?
Yeah, a couple times. I mean, the first one is just like growing up and realizing I was gay was a big shock. Because I don't know if it was just the time I was growing up. I'm 39 now. So, about 25 years ago, I was figuring it out. I didn't know what the word gay meant. And I don't know if that was the time, if that was where I was living. I was living in a small town in the Midwest. Like, we didn't talk about it. Nobody said it on TV.
It's a
Like,
combination. It's probably a
it just like,
combination of
it just
everything.
like, so like, you start having these feelings that nobody else is talking about. Instinctually it's bad. Don't talk about it. It's different, so don't tell anybody that you're different. Um, and then you go through I mean, not everybody, but I certainly then went through a few years of kind of like knowing this secret about myself and having to sort of start distancing myself from other people, to make sure that nobody caught on.
What did you tell yourself? Was it a conscious, I don't want anyone to find out thing, or just a kind of repressed feeling?
I never repressed it. I mean, it took me a while to figure out what it even was. Um, but being the book kid I looked it up and figured it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Uh, that it was like, oh, this isn't a passing phase. This isn't a natural curiosity about bodies that look like mine. Like, this is attraction, and that's different. And my Catholic church would not be happy to find this out about me. So we will proceed as if there's nothing going on, and we just won't let people know that part of you, and we'll do what we can to quell any of the things that might help people figure out who you really are.
80% of me, my heart is weeping for young Kirt. The other 20% of me is thinking that is some serious stuff to bring to his freaking narration. That if he had been happy and totally fine with it all and just an easy, you wouldn't have that. That is
No,
some serious hardcore stuff to tap into when you're doing books right now.
it's fun. I actually, the front page of my website now has a little paragraph that's not the typical bio that we give to people. It's not professional bio. It's just sort of a quick, here's my life story and why I like telling stories. And it's very much that. It talks about the times in my life when I had to pretend to be somebody else and also be so observant of how other people acted so I could emulate that. And how that truly has become a superpower later in life, that I spent so much time being so focused on how I moved through the world and how everybody else was moving around me.
And also attuned to other people. You probably are psychologically so attuned to other people that are hiding parts of themselves.
Oh, sure.
Not just that part, but and
No.
that, how many characters in books do we have to have that undertone of this character saying this, but they're actually feeling that?
Hmm.
That's like a major part in most characterizations, because that's
Yeah.
most people. And you've got it dialed in
No,
because
sure.
you're an
Like,
expert,
it
you
was the
know.
subtext of my real life, and I'm
Yeah.
very good at at reading subtext.
Yeah. When
Hmm.
did you have an epiphany one day to become more comfortable, or did you slowly just get sick of feeling like you had to hide?
Um, Looking back on it, I'm not sure if it was lucky or not. I just so happened to be, this is going to sound like I'm giving away the game. I was in show choir, and there were three other young men who, we all sort of realized we were queer at the same time. And we all kind of came out at the same time. So I had a little band of brothers to go through that experience with. So I would say I probably came out a little earlier than I was comfortable with, but it was because other people were coming out, and then the questions were being asked like, well, you're so close to that person, does that mean you're also? And
When you were in, but you were in a good group of friends. Are you still friends with them?
no,
Yeah.
not really. No,
Isn't
you
that
know,
funny? Do you not notice that, like, because of books, we want to wrap everything up? Like in the
right.
book, you would still be like best
Oh, sure.
mates.
Epilogue, 20 years later, you're all on vacation on a yacht. Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, I would, if I saw any one of them on the street today, I would still give them a hug and ask them how they're doing. And like, there wasn't a fallout or anything. We just,
Yeah,
we grew up, we grew in
people grow
different
apart.
directions, and when you don't see somebody or talk to someone regularly, those relationships fade. But they certainly were like, even like, I don't think it's something we did consciously, but like we all did kind of just do it at the same time, and then like it meant we didn't have to do it alone. So I think so. Yeah, I came out when I was 17 in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Not the fashionable thing to do, and I certainly experienced a lot of uh, fear about that. That was the first time I started struggling in school a little bit because I just didn't know how to deal with all of the emotional stuff on top of life, like the day to day of life. Um, and so that was the first time. And then when I went to college, I, as somebody who had been so successful in school, I got to college and for some reason I couldn't figure out how to function. And
Did you have a
again,
clear goal? Were you like, I'm going to
nope,
college to become, so you're just going to college because that's what we
because
do?
that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So,
kind of how I was going to college, but I was theater, drama, and all that. But I just
I
kept
wonder,
thinking,
I wonder how I would have done if I had actually pursued acting. Uh, but I didn't because I was I was the second most talented guy in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. The second most talented guy from a town of 50,000 doesn't go on to become a successful actor. Now, if I could go to my teenage self and slap myself and be like, shut up.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
not how it works. Like, there are different paths for different
And also,
people. And
who
like,
said you were second most talented?
oh, no, my friend Ben was definitely more talented than like he was a very talented actor and singer, and he went to a great MFA program, and like I don't think he's a full-time actor now, but he still does perform, and like he like objectionably objectively uh he was better than I was at that point. But again, we were very different people, and if somebody had been
Yeah,
like, yeah, but look at the two of you, high school is the only time your two types are ever going to go for the same part, so don't worry about what he's doing.
yeah.
If it's something you're passionate about and you love, which I did, I always loved acting and I loved theater. I loved speech and debate, which I did in high school as well. Like, I loved performing. I loved creating what we now call content, but like we didn't we didn't say call like create content back in the early 2000s. Um but like I liked making stories and telling people about like even like emceeing events, like all of those things. I loved all of that.
Yeah.
And I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, well, then go for it, see what happens. But I didn't because I was like, well, he'll be the one who's successful, so I'll figure out something else that I can do. Uh,
But if
and
you went
then,
back and told yourself that, then you know the whole butterfly effect. You will have successfully erased who you are now.
right,
You wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be you.
no,
You know what I mean?
right. It'd be
So that's
interesting.
a
It'd be interesting though, if there was a way to both be where I am now and see what that path would have been. I mean,
yeah.
there's 1,000 different times in my life that I look back on and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I had just done that instead of this. But
That's why I love time travel books because I like to imagine. And there was a girl, I'll never forget this. It wasn't fiction, it was real life. The other thing I always like to imagine, there's a certain kind of amnesia. It's really rare, but she woke up, she's like a 37-year-old woman, and she woke up and she lost like her memory from like a certain point when she was 16 years old on to 37.
ooh,
And she genuinely woke up completely that 16-year-old girl. And I always wonder when I'm like tempted to feel bad about my life and everything, I try to walk through my house and think, what would 16-year-old Daniela do with her life now if she
Mm,
saw her clothes she has in the flat and the, she's got a Scottish husband and she gets to read books? What would she do? She wouldn't
mm.
lie in bed till noon and watch Netflix till 3 a.m. and feel sorry for herself. She would like be all motive, and I
Yeah.
always think about that. I mean, she lost her memory, like she forgot she smoked.
Hmm.
She didn't smoke. She stopped like a 6 pack a day habit or something because she
Wow.
was like a different person.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know,
I mean, I think 16-year-old me would be very happy to learn that I'm now telling stories, that I'm acting
yeah.
in the way that I do.
What would he think of his life? Would he like his house and his life and his routine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an interesting twist on the time travel, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think he might wish we lived in a bigger city, but that's because he hadn't done that yet and learned that he doesn't care for living in large metropolises.
Yeah.
He'd be
Yeah.
like, "Why aren't we in New York or Chicago?" I'd be like, "Because you didn't like
We
that.
had
Go."
plans. What did you
Yeah,
do wrong?
I was like, "No, you didn't care for that." Like, yeah, a smaller
Uh,
community works well for you. But oh, but to just finish the thought about college. College is when I like flamed out, didn't know what I was doing, and again, later in life, when I was diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety and depression, looking back on that time is like, that's what happened. I became so depressed that I couldn't get out of bed. I wasn't going to classes. I couldn't function as a human being because there was this thing inside of me that I didn't know how to make it work. And without the structure of going to the same place every day at the same time, once I no longer had structure, things fell apart. But I
yeah.
mean, I was in my 30s before I figured that out. Before a doctor finally was like, maybe go take a test. Like
You can't
it
figure it
might.
out while you're in it, though, can you? When you're in
No,
the
you
middle
can't.
of it,
Well, and I
you
mean,
don't have to.
who would have thought this kid has ADHD? I was so high
Yeah.
performing. Like that was the kids who like couldn't focus at school. Like it
Yeah.
was just a very different thing. And so it took time, and there's so many things in my life that as I look back on it now, I'm like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what was going on there." So,
Yeah. You get epiphanies. I remember I looked at something and I realized I have lost the same weight in my life over and over
mm.
and over again and gained it and gone
And then you
through the
find
same
it.
cycle. Yeah. Yeah. And you just keep repeating the pattern until you recognize. So, okay, so let's talk about when I was in high school, I was in forensics, which was debating. I
Yes.
don't know why they called it forensics, to be honest.
It's the
Um,
study of the origin of things. And so that's why it's called forensics in a artistic format, because you're like the philosophy of how do things begin.
is that what you taught, and how did that start?
Yeah, so we also called it forensics when I was growing up, though it's now more commonly known as speech and debate. I got hauled into a classroom by this little old lady named Kathy Flannery when I was a freshman in high school, because like a couple people that I knew were in the room, like looking into forensics, and I was like, I don't know what that is, but like, so I was waiting outside, and like this woman literally grabbed me by the arm, brought me in the room, sat me down, asked me some questions, and was like, I think you'd be good at this. Write a speech and come back next week. And I was like, okay. So I did, and it turns out I loved it. It combined so many things I loved because it was writing, it was performing, and it was having um, teammates, which
Yeah.
are another motivating factor for me, like people to measure yourself against, both in a friendly teammate way, and then you go into competition and you try to win.
See,
You
I
know?
like the
And I'm
competition
a
and the
very
performing.
competitive person.
Yeah, me too.
So it's like, that really, it's artistic, it's creative, and you can walk away with a trophy. that appealed to me on so many levels. So I fell in love with it as a kid. And then I went to college, did not have a great time, came back, started volunteering. And then over time, when like the people who were hired at the school who were coaching, like just kept leaving, eventually I was the guy. Like, oh, you've been around for a while now. Why don't you do it? And then I stuck around for like 12 more years.
I
So,
mean, do you ever stop and think about how many kids' lives you might have changed?
um, I, I, I don't know that I,
You, you've
it's,
never thought about it, have you?
no, actually I have, which is why I'm trying to like, how do I say, no, I don't stop? Because I sort of always think about it. Like,
Yeah.
because those really, the great thing about social media has been that all of those kids, because this was like the early 2000s, all of those kids are like friends on Facebook or people I now follow on Instagram. Like, I follow their lives. I know what they're
I love
doing.
that.
I see them succeeding. And every time they post something cool about their life, I'm like, oh, so glad I knew that kid. And then I'll have like a memory of like a time when like we sat down and we had a real heart to heart, or like I know that I had a chance to like actually impart something that probably stuck with them. Um,
Because
you know?
those moments, I mean, they say that even the moments of kindness to the woman that drops something and you're kind,
Hmm.
the moments in life when you have a chance to give something to someone that they can take forward. Because I grew up, my mother was a teacher, and we used to drove us crazy. Every time we went to the grocery store, somebody had to walk up and go,
Right.
"Mrs. Acitelli, you saved my life." Mrs. I was like, "Fine,
Hmm.
we're buying our groceries." Kids don't like that
Yep.
stuff. But
Yep.
my mother was like very gracious, and it's only now I look back and I think how many lives, it's what we put out into this world in a tangible way, energy wise. And
Hmm.
it's kind of like putting money in a bank account, I think, of good energy. And you've
Yeah.
probably got a big old vault of good energy out there.
Well, I borrow from the vault when I need to. It's not always good energy that I'm putting out in the world, so it's a good thing that I do try to I don't know. It's so tell me if this makes any sense. I always think that like I'm a kind person, but not a nice person. Does that make sense?
No,
Like
tell me more about that.
kindness to me is like truly supporting someone, being honest, like moving through life, making sure that you're lifting people up, maybe in an invisible way, maybe in ways they don't even appreciate at the time.
Yeah.
But maybe you still come across a little rough around the edges. You're not somebody who's like hugging and like patting on the back and like giving affirmations all the time. But like
Oh
you're
yeah, no,
working to lift people up, Like I,
yeah,
I consider myself a kind person. Um,
that's authentic.
whereas
But I don't
nice,
think all that hugging stuff is niceness. To me, that's just like something else. I'll
see, to
kind
me
of
that
not
that I
say.
equate that with niceness. Like it's a thing you like. Niceness is performative in a way,
Yes,
you know.
that's, and I've been thinking about this. Ooh, let's delve into this
Okay.
because somebody brought something up and I had never considered it. Um, I told you a bit about like what I'm doing with my work and how I
Hmm.
found deeper meaning recently in my work.
Yeah.
Everyone's heard it a million times, no secret. But somebody pointed out to me that there's a difference between caring about, and I couldn't put it into words for such a long time. There's a difference between where do you get your respect and your driving force from? And some people care about profile. It's a big deal.
Hmm.
And that's what they strive for. And there's nothing wrong with that. And some people strive for, you know, proving something to themselves. Like a lot of actors, like I've got that actor thing. Joel actually put it to rest for me, but the whole, oh my God, I've got to prove I'm not a bad actress. Because
Mm.
everyone I know, every actor I know is like deep down, you hope somebody's not going to like suddenly tell you that this whole time you've been bad and everyone's just been
Right.
nice. like, but
But exactly right. People have just been being nice.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
kind
And
thing
you're,
to do if somebody's really like making themselves look a fool
yes.
is to say, Daniela, stop. That
But
ain't it.
all actors feel that way though, because we get it in our head. But Joel told me you wouldn't have done 250 books if you were bad. Somebody would
Right.
have told you, and to, so little piece by piece, I've started getting the happiness. And I
Mhm.
realized it's because my driving force isn't profile. But a lot of my colleagues, it is, and the people that I'm around. So you get the message from social media that profile is what matters, that is what success means. And it goes down to what you and I were saying before this call, the publisher indie thing. We all assume that the road is indie publisher, and then once you get publisher, you get bigger, bigger, bigger publishers,
Mhm.
awards, and you're measuring yourself on the next step on the ladder. And I was at the publisher thing and think, oh God, I've got to start trying to get the awards, and but and then I met Hannibal, and he reminded me of like, what about the whole doing the books you really love
Mhm.
part? And adding some of that in, it's like, I'm not, it's like you were saying, introvert, extrovert, what do you want? And maybe that's what I see in you, is that you've asked yourself those questions. Am I right that you tend to live your life now asking yourself what you really genuinely want? That's what I feel from you.
Yeah, I think I hate to keep bringing it back to the queer thing, but like I think that's one of the gifts of going through that so young.
Yeah.
Is like I already went through a time when I thought everything I had and everybody who loved me was going to go away. And I had to be at a point where I could accept that and still move and value myself above all of those things enough to be honest. And so as I've moved through life after that, I don't care about the artifice. I don't care about, you know,
Yeah.
uh relationships that are just for networking or connections, or to say that, oh, my good friend, when like you've had a conversation with a person. None of that appeals to me because I seek genuine, authentic connections.
And when you get
And
what you seek, it feeds your heart, doesn't it? Like
mhm,
I'm finding myself, I I know yes, I still have to start applying to awards. I get it, right? Part of the business, you got to
mhm,
do it. I get it. I'll do it. I will do it. And I post things
same.
sometimes.
I'm in
I
the
get
same
it.
boat.
But when a writer sends me a message, a writer sent me a message yesterday saying, I listened to such and such book you just did, and chapter such and I stopped breathing. And
Mm.
I'm sure 50% of the people hate my guts. So I'm not saying I'm like,
Yeah,
next level amazing, but that I'm still flying.
yeah.
I'm walking around smiling all day long for no reason at all. I'm just
Oh my God, print it out
happy.
and put it on your computer and frame
You
it.
see, I want the next one.
Hang it
I
up.
want the next one.
Well,
The
then,
old ones, you know, people do that, but they don't help me. I want the next ones.
well,
um, I have a question, a very important question from Kim.
okay.
Being from Sheboygan, did you have to work to lose the Midwest accent, or did you never have one? Can you do
Hey,
a
Kim.
Midwest accent for us?
Oh yeah.
I can't really
Oh,
hear
for
it.
sure. Oh yeah. No, I mean I could go back into it anytime.
Oh, I
Cause
love
for
that. It's
sure.
kind of Canadianish.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Cause we're like northern US. We're close to the border. So there's a lot of shared uh so I always say my first accent training was being in choir in school, because so much of the Midwest accent is in the diphthong of the vowel, and we had to learn to stop doing the diphthongs all the time
Oh, I love
and
your
be a
accent. It sounds
be
like
a
cold weather.
proper. Exactly. So I had to learn, just I mean, as a fifth grader in choir, to cut that out. This is what a vowel sounds like. So I always say my first accent training was just growing up in choir and learning proper vowels. And then
So,
once once you get like later in choir and you start singing Italian and German and Latin, like it just it evened out a lot of that for me. Not for everybody. Like there are still people I went to high school with, when I see them singing today, like they're still doing like community theater, and I see them singing, it's like, oh boy, that Sheboygan, that accent's coming out real strong.
I love that accent. Do you talk like that to your husband, or do you just
No, no,
talk
no. No,
really like it never comes out?
I worked very hard to, I shouldn't say I worked hard. I was conscious of it for so long that I stopped having that accent.
Oh, I
The
love
thing
it.
the thing that stuck around, the thing that stuck around the longest was the out vowel, so like about, and the a vowel, like bag. Those were the hardest to get rid of. But I worked for, it's called Catholic Heart Work Camp. It's a like a mission trip group where we traveled all over the country, and like one summer of being told every time I said the word about or bag, and somebody was like, ha ha, listen to how you say
About,
that
just
word.
how is it different from the way I say it? About.
Well, that's how you're supposed to say it.
How do
About,
you say it?
about, about is
About.
about,
About.
yeah, about, or bag, where you're really
And
like,
Kim says her too, Minnesota. Her mother spoke very proper, never had one. Minnesota's the same accent?
yeah, pretty much. I mean, subtle differences, but pretty close. Yeah.
I
And even
love
like
that
northern
accent.
Minnesota is different than southern Minnesota. Parts of Wisconsin are different, but yeah.
So could you do a whole movie in that accent if you had to, or a
Oh,
whole
sure.
book
Yeah.
in that accent?
I'd be afraid though of like, after doing it for so long, like what if it doesn't go away?
It's
You
so
know?
cute. It's so American sounding. It's so gorgeous.
So yeah, I did get cast in a book once where all of a sudden there was somebody from Wisconsin in the book, and I was like, is this why I got this book? For this character in particular, because they said he had such a strong Wisconsin accent. And I was like, well, oh well. Who cares if
James
this is
says
why I
he's
got
in
it?
Iowa and they hear hears very similar sounding accents.
Hmm.
Is Iowa the same kind of thing?
Iowa, our Wisconsin and Iowa touch each other just a little bit, right in our corners. So yeah, it's all Midwest,
Because
and
when you leave
especially rural
America,
Midwest.
because I think it's the rural, because I was from California, so I never like saw that part of America. So being gone for like decades,
Hmm.
I've got a romanticized like idea of like you going to like the general store and like the cafe with like the great coffee and apple pie
Hey,
and
there's some truth to
porches.
that. There's, I
Is
mean,
there?
yeah, I mean, I would say growing up in my small town, like a lot of it was that. And then once, so where I grew up is right next to Kohler, Wisconsin. Kohler is the same Kohler as Kohler toilets. So they're very popular. That
It's a
if
brand, a
yeah,
brand.
yeah, if you start looking even where you are, you will start seeing Kohler toilets. Um, but so there was a lot of money in that one corporation, and the head of that corporation loved to golf. And so he started building golf courses that have since become world class golf courses. Like the PGA has been in my hometown. And with that came a lot of money. And then
Uh,
suddenly all those things that were like genuinely small town when I was younger as an adult are now like nostalgia porn. Like they've made it like, so they're like, we are
yeah,
going to make this be like small town living, even
it
though
is
there's like,
nostalgia porn. I think that's
yeah.
what it is with me. That it's like kind of like what you get when watching the Gilmore Girls.
Right.
It's nostalgia, but
Hmm.
for a lot of us, it's nostalgia for something we never had, but we
Right.
just imagine that we kind of like should have.
Right. So
Like, like
there's all these people flying in from Chicago to have these experiences where I grew up, and it's like, this place is more small town than it was when I was a kid. Like, what happened? You know? Because they're trying to provide that experience
yeah,
versus,
I'm all for that. I mean, it's like
it's been great for the
Disneyland.
economy where I grew up, so I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, I'm all for making things prettier and more. Now James said, "Oh, we've got Bill Bryson." You remind me of Bill Bryson, James. Um, he's RP, British RP, and he's so you're the opposite. So he's the opposite of me. He's British living in Iowa, and
Mm.
I'm American living in his country. So the melting pot of the Midwest, influence of Wisconsin, Illinois next door. And Kim says pickled pig's feet.
Ugh.
Have you
No,
ever
thank
had
you.
that?
No. Mm-mm. I know
Okay,
where I
I
could
think the
get some, but I don't
conversation is
want it.
disintegrated.
It's yeah, that I mean that is like Wisconsin bar food.
Is
They
it
will
really?
big jars of pickled pig's feet, pickled eggs, pickled different vegetables. It's I mean, and I like pickled vegetables, but no thank you to the pig's feet. I'm good without it.
When you're narrating books, do you ever find yourself like craving the stuff the characters are eating? I remember doing Christy K. James's books and I gained like 15 pounds doing that series. Like, do you ever find yourself like eating things or drinking things because like they keep
Yes.
talking about them in the book?
Yeah. Yeah. If my husband was here, I could pull him in and be like, tell him about all the times I say I have a craving for this because I was reading about it in the book.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get back on the topic. I build this call as we're going to talk about the important things. So far, we
Yeah.
said pig's feet.
Right.
So I want to know. I'm trying to figure out, full disclosure, where your star quality comes from.
Mm.
So, so when you go in the booth, what are you focused on? What are you telling yourself? What do you bring from your life as the person you are into the booth? And how has that changed now from when you started 2013? You started
Uh 2016.
2016.
Mhm.
Okay, so when you started in 2016, how has that, how has Kirt changed? And what things do you wish you could go back and tell 2016 Kirt to give yourself an easier ride of it? Because there is a learning curve as a
You know, the
narrator.
really interesting thing is, I think a lot of my journey over the last 7 years has been trying to get back to who I was when I first started.
Yeah.
Before I had so many outside voices and outside
Yes.
influences and other opinions telling me how I should do something and that I should be more like this person or try to do it more like that, or that person's more successful, so maybe if I'm like them. I My very first audiobook is still one of the most popular things I've ever done. It was re-released. This was a small indie book I did in 2016. It was picked up and re-released by Macmillan last year. So my very first, I mean, think about that. How many people want their very first audiobook out in the world forever?
Do you still
Like,
get paid? Do you still get paid for it though?
no,
No,
no.
no. But
Um,
still,
but
but is it your narration out
it
there?
is still my narration. My baby narrator effort is still out in the world, more popular than ever, and yet people love it. And
Hence
I, of
joy.
course, can I can hear the things that, like, technically I've gotten better at some things and I understand the art form differently. But there was also just so much instinct that I had about how to tell a story.
And joy. Did you not find? Because that's what
And
I've recently learned. Joy. I lost my joy trying to get everything right.
yeah, I, I maybe not joy, um, but there was a carefreeness about it.
Yeah.
Because when I was recording that book, I had no idea who the author was. I was so naive. I thought, oh, it's this book. It's my first one. I'll get it out of the way. And then when it came out was when I realized, oh, actually, this author who picked me is sort of a big deal in this male romance genre. Like, he has thousands of fans, and all of a sudden there's lots of people who care about me. And then that author eventually became a mainstream, like, author darling of the industry and has brought me with him.
I love that.
I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, ignore those voices. Trust yourself. You're good at this. There is something in you that knows how to do this. Trust that. And get more coaching, because the best way to quell all those other voices is to listen to someone who you trust and listen to their feedback.
And they tell you, listen to yourself.
Yeah.
PJ, Johnny, Joanna, oh my God, Aaron, I can't tell you how many coaches, when my crazy brain has tried to go crazy, have made
Yeah.
me, as PJ, I'll never forget. They're destroyers and they're creators.
Mm.
And you got to pick a side.
Yeah.
And if you're a creator, you can't play the other game.
Yeah. So I would say now where I feel like I have a lot more tools in my tool belt than I did in 2016.
Technically.
But yes, technically, I mean, and including things like how to create character voices and how to dissect the text and all of those things that I've learned and gotten better at. But yeah, there was definitely a period where I tried way too hard to be other people instead of myself. And who knows where I would be now if I had embraced how good I was back then. Instead of thinking, oh, I got really lucky. I've tricked people into thinking I can do this. Now I better go learn how to do it. If I had just realized like, somehow innately I have this in me. Now how do I move forward? Trusting myself.
Yeah, we all wish we had. Except Julia Whalen. I asked her that question and she said, "No, I always I always found it easy. I thought it was good." I was like, so we would be Julia Whalen if we got back.
Yeah.
And I envy that level. I mean, it's too late because I did spend years
Right.
worrying.
Was that specifically about audiobook work though?
Yeah, I asked
Because
her.
she
I
was
said,
she was a child actress. She had gone through the
yeah.
ringer. Maybe it's something she went through in a different career that by the time she got to audiobooks, she was more comfortable with what she could do.
What struck me is that she has an incredible core of, I mean, of course she probably goes through hard times and everything, but she has an incredible core of self-knowledge and self-belief. That's the one thing that's shown very, very strongly through that interview. She has such a core of self-knowledge and self-belief. And that's a kind of confidence. I'm quite a confident person. We're all confident in different areas of our lives. We
You'd have
all
to be.
are. Yeah. But then we also have other areas, our Don Quixote's windmill. Yeah, and that struck me, that level of confidence in her ability to do it. I can't imagine Julia, no matter how young, thinking, am I a bad actress? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
God, lucky.
isn't it lovely to be where you are now, though? Isn't it lovely to be where you are now? You've taken all those voices on. You're an industry expert. You're beloved in the community. You're comfortable in yourself and what you're doing. I mean, do you enjoy it? What's your routine? Like, when do you wake up in the morning? Don't tell me 5 a.m.
No, I'm not that much of a morning person, but
Because you and I couldn't be friends.
no, but I do have a pretty, like, not 5, but sometimes 6. Part of that is that I have a husband. I have a partner who has a 9 to 5, and if I want to spend time with him, a part of my schedule kind of has to match what's going on in his life. But the
Okay,
other
I can,
part,
of any reason on earth to wake up at that ungodly hour, love is a good one.
well, I was the other person in bed has an alarm going off. It's like, all right, I guess we're getting up
Yeah.
now. But the other part is again realizing through my journey with neurodiversity that structure is so important. Getting up at the same time, showering, getting dressed. My booth is not in my house. I have an office outside the home. Commuting to the office, having this be my workspace, working for a set
Wow.
amount of hours, knowing I'll be done by this time, and then I have, from this hour to this hour, I'll do some admin or some emails. I'll do some
Do you rent a
podcast
studio
work.
or something? Do you rent a studio? Is that?
So I have a studio bricks, and then I rent an office where I keep my studio bricks. Just again, just outside the home. That was the most important part. Get out of the house.
See, I would hate
Separate
that. I admire
separate
it,
the
but I would
home.
hate it.
I couldn't function when there was laundry to be done or dishes in the sink or anything like that. So like I spent my whole workday being like, well, I should be cleaning the house. And then as soon as my workday was done and I'm in my home, I was thinking I should really be working. Like it's right there. Why shouldn't I? It's like it was a constant cycle of feeling like I should be doing the other thing that I'm not doing. So
Yeah,
the
like
separation
and
of
like,
spaces was so
do you
important.
remember when you're younger? Like, I don't remember life being like this. I had like a whole week off, and I have literally spent 2 days on the phone with Microsoft Help Desk. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah,
Like
they don't
every
write
single
sitcoms
time.
about that.
What?
They don't write sitcoms about that. So we
They
we didn't
don't.
get to see that as what adulting looks like.
They
Wouldn't it
never.
be fun
Three's
to just have some
Company.
shenanigans like the people on Friends?
They never did anything. Like nothing. But I had a
Mm-mm.
full-time job. I remember, and I somehow got to the full-time job, exercised, got home, made dinner. But I. Do you know what I think? Okay, I wanted. Okay, I'll admit this now because they can't fire me because I'm gone. I think the difference is that when I went to that full-time job, I didn't waste 1 second of brain space thinking about that job.
Right.
Like I was
I mean,
thinking about all the other stuff. So like they were paying me to
mhm,
just physically be there thinking about other stuff.
yeah,
And and I walked on the way to the full-time job and on the way home and I exercised. So I think that's the key. And when I got home, I had nothing to think about with a full-time job because I didn't care. I'd
right.
forget about them and think about my diet and life. But when you're narrating, you're a freelancer, you're thinking
It's
about
very easy to be thinking about it all the time.
yeah, the
Yeah.
client, the books you're doing, you're watching TV and you're on your phone under the pillow pretending you're paying attention to your husband and instead you're answering emails to
Right.
authors.
I literally did that yesterday. I was responding to a message from an author and my husband came up to give me a hug and I hugged him and I kept the phone so that I could continue to type as I was hugging my husband and I realized, "Oh god, that's not great.
I
It's not
know,
great. That's
me
not great,
too.
Kurt. We might have to think about some boundaries again because that's not great."
I feel really, really bad. Even my pet, even my bird, is like begging
Mm,
me for attention. But you're answering emails and,
mhm,
recording. And I still think the perfect schedule is out there, but I think you're probably smart. I used to give myself, I don't know who I heard this from, but it was a good idea and it worked for a while before COVID and then all bets
mm,
were off. I had a commute. So before I started recording, my booth is in my house, but I would
mhm,
walk around the park a half hour one way before I work. And then after work, I'd walk the other way
mm,
around that park. So like I was walking to and from work, but then COVID hit and I haven't left the flat since.
right.
What year was that?
2020. Yeah. Hillary Huber just told a very similar story on our podcast, so I wonder if you heard it from her.
Oh, she gives herself a commute.
She was talking about somebody else, but somebody else who gave themselves a
It's
commute.
it's
Yeah.
possible. There's some very smart person out there that had that idea. So
Yeah.
so this is so okay. I do have a final question for you, but I want to knit this all together. So 10-year-old Kirt building Legos, coming home from school. I love the way you don't let it seems like you know what it is about you that I think I've put my finger on. I've spent this entire call trying to figure it out. Is your reaction to life. I think that's where I'm getting that star quality thing. It's that I love the way you're resilient. Something
Mm,
happens, you look at it, you think about it, and you kind of lobby to the side. Do you know what I mean? I think
yeah.
that might be your superpower. What do you think?
It's one of them. Yeah. I mean, I'm great in an emergency.
Yeah, I
I
can
I
see that.
I can I almost always feel like I'm looking at life from like 20,000 feet. So when when really stressful or scary things are happening, I am often able to be like, okay, let's look at the bigger picture. Let's figure out how we can fix this, how we can be helpful, if it's best to just stay back. And it's also part of the anxious brain that like I am always thinking a mile ahead as well. Like what possible outcomes could this have so that I'm ready to come against any sort of obstacle that might come. So my brain is always moving. I'm always thinking about what could happen then, and how would I respond to it. So if it does happen, I'm ready to go. And that type of vigilance can be exhausting. But learning how to embrace it and be like, okay, well, if that's the way your brain works, use it. Figure out a way to use it.
So, Kirt, for the YouTube audience that's going to be watching this in the next 300 years, if you could leave one thing with them from this call, one piece of wisdom, advice from your entire life, in your career, anything, one important thing to say to people, what would you like to say?
Oh, I think it has, and I'm probably not going to say it the way I wish I could for posterity, but it has something to do with how you have to sort of knit together a trust in yourself and a trust in your instincts, while also paying attention to what the people around you are sometimes saying out loud, but often are quietly guiding you in the direction you're supposed to be going. And so, people you love and you trust, you know, I think my path would have been different if I had believed more in what I had to offer in the arts space, and also listened to all the people around me who were like, wait, you're not going into the arts? You're not going to be an actor? And for 20 years I said no. And then this career found me, and it's like, oh, well, I guess I couldn't avoid it.
Yeah. And think about it. If I keep going back to 16-year-old Kirt waking up in your life now, it's we tend to look at our life, what would it have been like if we were different when we were younger? Oh my God, what is it like now? What have you achieved? Look at what you've achieved.
Right.
I mean,
You get
look
to
at
play
who
all
you
the
are.
parts now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've knit it together. Yeah. So, and it's an example for people that maybe I love that this call is going to be seen by somebody that's on their second year as a narrator and worried that they're getting it wrong and might need to pack it in. And looking on social media and thinking, I'm not like these people. Maybe I'm not as good. They're going to watch this call and they're going to see you sitting here just being Kirt.
Hey, it's what we bring to the table, right? It's just ourselves.
I love it. Okay, so I did digress quite a bit, but I think we did cover the important things. And I just knew I knew that you would be a fantastic guest. I told Kirt and Andre on that call, I think I might have surprised them a little bit, having met them 20 minutes earlier, that they had to be my friend because they're both, look at this guy, he's so lovely. So I value our short-lived friendship because I have, in 2 conversations with you, Kirt, learned a tremendous amount.
Well, thank you.
And I'm grateful for your time and your company.
I am so grateful to have had the chance to chat with you more, because I so enjoyed our conversation for the Narrator Roundtable. And also, when you asked me to do this, I had to get over myself a little bit, because I mean, I remember watching these when I was getting started still, and being like, maybe someday I'll know enough, or I'll have had enough experience that somebody would want me to share it. But like, long time down the line. And when you first asked, I was like, no, not me, not yet. And I sometimes have to like look at my actual career and where I am and be like, no, you've learned some things. It's okay to be the person who is sharing what you've been, what others have shared with you.
But also, I asked you to share because of who you are. And
Mm,
so I would have asked you 7 years ago because who you are would have still been who you are. You see
that's
what
true
I'm
too.
saying?
Yeah.
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 So it's wonderful. I'm
Well,
very,
thank you.
very grateful. Thank you guys to the guests. You are all fabulous. Mwah! And thank you, Kirt. And you guys, video will be up soon. And take care. And I need the links to the narrator roundtable and all links you want to share because we'll put them in the about section for anyone watching the video.
Will do. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Mwah!